today we're going to be talking to Christina Urso. She's an independent journalist who's been focused mostly on FBI abuses and corruption. And lately, she's primarily been focused on the Governor Whitmer kidnapping plot. Now, after the plot was revealed and the arrests were made, it started to come out that many, if not most, involved were actually FBI agents and informants who were basically just baiting these men into a plan. And Christina is actually in the middle of making a documentary on the plot and the men involved. In fact, let me just show you the trailer so that you can get a better idea.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
We're grateful to the FBI and law enforcement to discover these domestic terrorists and stop them. You know, it's the sort of behavior you might expect from ISIS.
You might see a number that high in a sprawling narcotics conspiracy that stretches from coast to coast and beyond. That's a pretty high number in a case like this. It really reflects, I think, how deeply the government has been diving into this investigation to try to make these cases.
It was just literally a bunch of working class guys who, on the weekend, got together and exercised their rights and trained with firearms. So the FBI says, hey, we'll just pay for everything.
Who arranged the meeting? The FBI's paid provocateur. Robeson was getting paid to set this stuff up.
So they make the route, they set the locations, they make the plan, they do everything, and Adam's literally just sitting in the basement of a vacuum repair shop smoking blunts all day.
You're going to hear that my client was the leader of this group. But I think you're also going to hear that there was an election held to identify the leader, and it was Dan.
How can I frame this social situation to make this naive person appear to be a dangerous, violent terrorist? The whole goal was for the FBI to spend millions of dollars to create militia groups, record them saying offensive stuff, and then frame them in a fake conspiracy.
Christina Urso, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start off with this, the kidnapping plot. Let's start off with the official story. What happened? What's the official narrative of what happened?
Well, the official story is this goes back to the 2020 election. During 2020, the government claims in March of 2020, they had an informant who infiltrated a militia group who they claim was planning to kidnap and possibly kill Gretchen Whitmer. They charged 14 guys, 6 federally with conspiracy to kidnap. They added a superseding indictment for some of the individuals that included conspiracy to create a WMD. And then 8 other men were charged at the state level with providing material support, essentially, to a terrorist act.
Okay, let's go back even further. Let's go to the actual event. The day of, what did anything happen at all? Was there actually an infiltration where Governor Whitmer was actually confronted by men who tried to tie her up, put her in a car? Tell us, anything.
No.
Nothing like that happened.
No, nothing like that happened. I mean, the story was always very vague by the government. They said that the guys wanted to put her on trial, like they were going to take her in a boat to Wisconsin and hold have a citizen's arrest and a citizen's trial. They also mentioned vague plots to storm state capitals, and then they mentioned potentially other governors, but there was nothing really solid or concrete. There's no actual agreement, and so they just said that it was a plot, right, by these right-wing extremists, white supremacists that had been radicalized by Donald Trump. Trump at one point had tweeted out something like liberate Michigan and liberate these groups during the lockdowns. And they said that basically these guys were radicalized by Trump and planned to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer.
So they say that they had a plan, but did they ever have any sort of course of action? Did they bust them on the day that this kidnapping plot was going to happen?
No, they actually created a ruse where they told the men that they were going to be meeting up with someone to get free gear, and they arrested them in Ypsilanti. But no, there was no. It's interesting because when you think about like the law enforcement stopping or doing a sting operation, you imagine there's like a crime already in motion, and
Right.
that the law enforcement acts as like listening posts or something like that. That their informants are there observing and like reporting back something that's already happening. In this case, these individuals like wouldn't even have met each other without the FBI creating the events that brought them together. Uh,
Okay, so
so
so the way they busted them, so they had to, because of course the FBI can't just, well, at least they're not supposed to just arrest you based on conversation. Like if you're just having some conversation of like, oh yeah, I want to go and kidnap the governor and tie him up and take him away, that is just talking. That's just fantasy. It has to at least kind of manifest into some sort of action before I would imagine the FBI could actually then make an arrest, right? So to them,
so
the
to what
action was going to
they
pick up this free gear.
no. Basically, what they say when they arrested these guys in October of 2020, they said that, there were two militia groups that were planning to kidnap her, and that they had called and shared like a national militia meetup where different militias from across the country came together. They called it like a national attack planning, and they claimed that they held these training events to like, I guess, plan or practice like kidnapping her. What they omitted and what they did not say was that they had created those events. Their informants called and chaired those meetings. So the official story was just that there were these militia groups that called this national meeting and were planning to organize different militias from different groups to carry out this kidnapping. And that's how it was presented initially by the
And then they
government.
went
That
to
was
go
their
get free.
story.
Then they showed up. Some of them showed up to get some gear.
Yeah, so what actually happened, that's the official story, is that these groups did this on their own. What actually happened is, and it really goes back before 2020, some of these informants became informants in like 2019 officially, and they met some of the guys who would end up being charged in the conspiracy online. In one example, for Barry Croft, who the government called a ringleader and spiritual leader of a conspiracy. In any case, he was a middle-aged truck driver. He had a friend, Casey Massey, who was like a militia border defender who passed away under suspicious circumstances. They had their informant pose as a friend of Barry's friend and say he's going to show up at the funeral and befriend Barry that way. And this was well before the official investigation begins of March of 2020. This is in January of 2020 and even in late 2019. And these informants start, becoming friends, inviting these people to groups. And that informant in particular was a pedophile. And he was posing as a national commander of a fake militia group that was created by the FBI called the National Patriot 3%ers. And so what happens is in March of 2020, another informant, Big Dan, infiltrates a group called the Wolverine Watchmen and Militia. Barry Croft, for example, the gentleman I just talked about, the ringleader, he actually is a trucker from Delaware. He didn't even live in Michigan. So the Wolverine Watchmen was a group created in November of 2019 by Joe Morrison and Pete Musico. They're working class guys from Jackson County, Michigan. Like, this is out in the middle of nowhere. It is initially created as like an online prepping group, and they occasionally hang out in their backyard and like drink beer and shoot their guns. They do target practice in their backyard. Well, in March of 2020, Dan Chappell, the FBI informant, infiltrates the group. He joins through Facebook. He claims that the Facebook algorithm recommended this private Facebook page while he was just looking online for pro 2A groups so he could maintain his, quote, perishable tactical training skills. Now, this is someone who actually is a military veteran. He's an Iraq War veteran. He used to be a firearms instructor. Why he would be wanting to join this group from Jackson County with these guys who have no training is beyond me. But that was their cover story for how he joined this group and came across it. And he said that when he joined, he saw threats of violence against law enforcement. They didn't document these threats, though. but that's how he becomes an informant March 17th of 2020. And then from there, he goes on to become the XO for the Wolverine Watchmen group, and he kind of turns them into a militia group. And then that government starts hosting, they're doing these tactical trainings with Dan leading it. They have other informants, a network of 12 informants, and they're bringing other people from the area online. Like they're into these online groups. They start hosting these field training exercises and then inviting people to them. And from there, they're basically just filming people doing things, and they're recording them saying offensive things and then making it look like they're engaged in something, scary.
How many men were charged? Was it 14?
14.
And of the 14, how many of them were informants?
So none of those 14 that were arrested were informants. There were 12 informants used total in the investigation, and 2 undercover agents as well. The FBI has what they call online covert employees, also OCEs. There were a couple FBI agents posing as different militia people online. It's a very convoluted story, but I would say that the FBI outnumbered the defendants in this case probably 4-1.
4-1?
Yeah.
So 12 informants, 2 undercover, and then there was a bunch of others?
Yeah, then there's the online ones. Right. So
who are these online, what are they, bots? Are they actual FBI agents?
No, they're actually FBI agents. They call them OCEs, online covert employees. They maintain false identities. So there was an agent named Lauren Hastings who posed as a woman named Elise Marie. Elise Marie befriends Adam Fox, the homeless man that was living in the basement of the vacuum repair shop that the government claimed was the ringleader of the plot. The online covert employee posing as Elise Marie befriends his girlfriend Amanda Keller on Facebook and says, hey, I have a boyfriend he's interested in militia stuff. Maybe he can come train with you guys. That man she introduces as her boyfriend was the undercover agent. His name is Mark Schweers, but he was posing as a man named Mark Woods. So that's how he's introduced to Adam Fox. And these are the kinds of things they were doing.
Right.
So they created
they're faking. So these are FBI agents who create fake profiles, fake names, fake photographs of themselves.
Yes. And then they pretend to be pro 2A people or militia people. Yeah, they're online using false identities, and then
I bet now that I'm thinking about this with AI, I bet that they're salivating at the mouth with AI, with thinking, wow, now we can create fake. They don't have to use. Because I would imagine, what photographs did they use when they're trying to infiltrate online? And they're not using their own picture. They're using somebody else's picture. But with AI now, they can create entirely fake people and pictures that look legit. Oh, yeah, I'm totally one of you. I'm just like you. Look at me and look at my stuff and look at my house and look at the things
terrifying.
I do. That is terrifying that they could use it in that way.
It's terrifying, too, that one of the things we learned from the discovery is that the FBI in their own documentation talked about giving one of their informants access to a database of targets, right? Those are the people who they were targeting in the investigation. And so you go, okay, what database? What's the criteria for being put in this database? It's pretty bizarre.